first up item on our agenda is to consider approval of minutes for February 15th, 2023. Commissioners?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes for February 15th, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, moving on. Public hearing, case number PD 2022-009, applicant Joel Allen, representing Pecan Landing LLC, is requesting a rezone of property located at 0 Forest Road, parcel R77510, acres 36.77, A0515, Motley William, of the city of Stephenville, Erath County, Texas, from R1, single family, and R2, 1 and 2 family, to PD plan development. The applicant will present the plan development. Mr. Kelman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So staff's been working with Mr. Joel Allen. He's here tonight. Regarding this PD, you might recall that our initial review of this was the conceptual plan on the September 20th, 2022 meeting. Mr. Allen presented the conceptual plan at that time, and we received input from several of the community members, and then the commission also provided some input to Mr. Allen on his development plan. He has returned with a packet for us to consider tonight, and I'd like to just start off on page 12 of your packet. This parcel is currently about 36 acres. It has a zoning of R1 and R2. The future land use is R1. Again, he has dual zoning on this parcel. We do have water and sewer available as illustrated on page 15. His site plan is on page 17, and we have seen several renderings of this since September, and he has taken many of our comments and has worked diligently to try to come up with something that he thought would be a good development for the area and for the community. His narrative begins on page 18, and then on page 24 and following through to page 32, I believe it is, we have several renderings, including an example of what the signage would look like entering into the neighborhood, screening fencing along Forest Lane, and then some actual renderings of the type of homes he's wishing to build. Again, this project, he's looking at a mixture of single-family residence to include properties that will be on estate-sized lots, which are over the 7,500 square foot minimum. Some of his lots, he has 111 lots that were going to be range anywhere from 50 foot in width up to about 65, 67 feet in width. That is a concession that he's looking for on the width dimensions related to R1. Also for the R2 or the townhome lots, he's asking for a 5-foot reduction in the width on those lot dimensions. But I think it's notable to point out that the lot depth on every lot he's proposing exceeds what the minimum would be for R1 or R2. Even though he's asking for those concessions in relation to the lots, the lot width, we do have several zoning districts across the city which would allow lot dimensions that he's proposing and even smaller. So I just want to make that point. The base zoning, though, based on the comments that I've included in my staff report, I'm basing that on the zoning of R1 and R2. So I'd like to back up to my staff report now. And I do have some comments and that I've included in the staff report. Again, this is a planned development site. It's 164 lots, which includes 14 HOA lots. And Mr. Allen, I may need you to help me explain the 14 count on that. The remainder lots are 6 for the oversized lots, which exceed the requirements of R1. Again, 111 lots that are a little smaller in width than the R1 requirement. 33 townhome lots. He is asking for lots 2 and 3 of Block B and lots 24 through 27 of Block E to have dual frontage, so that would require a concession as well. And then on item 6, he is proposing parkland dedication. since we drafted this report, there's been some modifications to this, so it's my understanding now, if we look at the site plan, there is a lot that is approximately 1/2 acre, and it is, it's lot 1 of block F, at Honeybee Circle and Lone Star Lane, intersection there. And that's on page 17, if we can get to that. So what is being proposed now is that he would provide this lot, thank you, appreciate that. The lot, basically in the right, there you go, that one, yes ma'am, thank you for that. This is the lot that he's proposing for a park that would be dedicated to the city, and it's my understanding that he's agreed to include the equipment that the Parks Director would request for that lot, or for that park. This would be dedicated to the city and be a public park. The remainder of the lots would be owned and controlled by the HOA, and maintained by the HOA. Last comment was related to the improvements along Forest Lane. And I believe Mr. Allen is asking to remove that from the report, and that will be discussed through a developer agreement at a later time through city staff and city council. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Commissioners, do you have questions for Steve?
A little bit, please.
I sure will. Let's get closer to Miss Mary Beach.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Steve?
Steve?
Yes,
My
sir.
usual question, is this the highest and best use for this property?
Yes, sir, I would agree so. We have a strong need for housing across the city, so that's what the future land use is also designated as, so I would support that as the highest and best use.
Thank you.
Just to clarify for my sake, so the number 7, developers requesting a concession that all public improvements related to Forest Lane be paid for by the city, that's struck, and that's no longer being requested.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, what we will do now, we'll have Mr. Allen speak, and then I will open a public hearing. I can see that there's a lot of people here who want to have their voices heard. So let's let Mr. Allen address us and talk about his development, and then I'll open a public hearing.
Madam Chair, as a reminder, and I failed to mention it,
Yes.
I apologize, we do have one letter of opposition received by staff.
Thank you, sir. And that letter was from Derek Stogstill. One of the requests he made was asking for a reschedule. This has been placed on the public record, and Mr. Allen has gone through his proper due diligence to get this on the schedule, so we're going to go ahead and hear it today. But know that any decision we make is simply a recommendation to City Council. This will go to City Council first week of April, and they are the ones who will make the final decision. So y'all are welcome and should show up to that City Council meeting as well. Sir?
Besides us getting up and making comment, is there a chance for question and answers?
Yeah, during the public hearing portion. Okay. Mr. Allen, if you would like to discuss this.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Killen, thank you, and members of the committee, and members of the community. Thank you for coming out tonight. Stephenville has a housing shortage. There are currently only 25 homes available and no new construction under $450,000. We are trying to solve this problem. When we presented the concept plan, we took your feedback and members of the community into consideration and have put together a planned development that allows more citizens a chance at owning a home. Based on the feedback that we received, we've added more open space and a playground park, which we will be dedicating to the city to meet the parkland requirement, and taken measures to reduce the additional traffic along Forest Road. Speaking of Forest Road, we know that improvements need to be made in order to make it a collector. We will be working with the City Council to establish an agreement on the appropriate funding mechanism. So tonight, We are not asking you to vote on the funding of Forest Road, but rather, if this project meets the building requirements, we are asking you to recommend the development plan and request for a rezone to a planned development. One member of the committee recommended half-acre lots. While it's not feasible to do all half-acre lots, we did incorporate half-acre lots to the layout as a buffer to the adjacent properties in the neighborhood. Another recommendation from the last meeting was to create a through street to alleviate the extra traffic on Forest Road. We specifically designed a street on the south end that will eventually connect to the Fry Street extension. You'll also notice that we have 3 ingress and egress opportunities in the neighborhood and a large 50-foot right-of-way to help with delivery trucks and larger vehicles. In addition, we've paid for an $11,500 traffic impact analysis study that the city will benefit from that will detail the average daily trips within a half mile of the property, including the intersections of the Northwest Loop and 377, Fry, Forest, Pecan Hills, and Wolf Nursery roads. And we will make the necessary adjustments based on the results of this study. So, why a planned development? We chose to do a planned development because we currently have 2 different types of zoning with 2 different types of housing. R1 single family and R2 1 and 2 family. With a planned development, we would have more flexibility to be sensitive to the estate lots on the north, more sensitive than would be possible with an abrupt R1 single family zoning with alleyways. On the south side, we believe that individually platted townhomes instead of 2-family zoning would create a more walkable community for individuals and fit nicely with the adjacent B2 retail and commercial parcel. We've actually created a green space buffer between the townhomes and Forest Road. And we're going to have sidewalks on both sides of the street throughout the development. Bottom line, we have 4 different types of lots here, and a planned development zoning allows us to be flexible and thoughtful about the layout. Let's talk about density. Rather than just applying for a straight line zoning change to R1.5, which would allow for a more dense development on smaller lots, 5,000 square feet, we chose to reduce the density with many of our lots that came in even larger than the 7,500 square foot R1 lots. Section 154.08 of the zoning ordinance for planned development districts states, no development plan may increase the gross density in excess of that allowed by the base district. So let's take a look at that. What does the base district call for? Well, the base district calls for 6 lots per acre, which would be 220 lots. We have 150. 14 lots for open space and parks. We are much less dense than even the base zoning for this area. Again, we need the houses, and we're trying to do this in a responsible way and be respectful so that enough people can afford to have a home. I'd like to address the concern that was brought up in the last meeting, and that is property values. When you have homes that were built in the 1980s and the 1990s in the vicinity, and you bring in new construction, you create new comps with higher price per square foot, which ultimately raises property values. This has been proven to be the case all over Central Texas, especially in Erath County in the last few years. Look at the land prices in the county. Look at the new barn dominiums and the new construction that's popping up in the county. Have you seen these prices? The facts are new construction raises property values. Mr. Sanford's here. From an economic perspective, bringing in houses allows businesses to hire and attracts new businesses in. If we don't provide the houses, these businesses, we're going to be losing these businesses. Businesses aren't going to see Stephenville as a viable market for new opportunities. So houses create demand, and demand raises property values. Finally, I'd like to mention the setbacks in the planned development. We are widening some lots, like Mr. Killen mentioned. We're reducing some lot sizes. We're increasing the depths of others to make this all happen. Our backyards are as large or larger than most R1 single-family homes in this town. My engineer is here, and he's been working very closely with the city engineer on the engineering requirements. He's put together a great chart that we can refer to on all of our setbacks and dimensions, and he'd be happy to answer any questions that come up with that respect. We need to get this done. If we want to solve the housing shortage in Stephenville, we need participation from the city. Members of the committee, I ask you to approve the rezone, the development plan, and let the council vote for housing that is accessible to its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Allen? Allen,
That's
Go ahead.
Good.
go.
Mr. Allen, what are your projected price points for these homes, single-family estate and townhomes?
You know, there will be a range. We're looking at prices in the 3s and 4s, and of course, in the state lots, it's gonna be on the upper end. It may be above that. But there will be a wide range for different price points for folks.
Okay, when you're comparing average yard sizes to other R1s, give me a number example, if you can.
Reese, you wanna address that?
Most of the backyards are at least 20-25.
I'm sorry, Reese, could you come up to the microphones, just so we could get it on record? 'Cause people online can't hear.
Sure. Yeah, most of the backyards are at least 20-25 foot deep.
Okay, but square footage wise, what is that?
20 by 50, 100 square foot. I mean,
Okay,
that would be on the low end, because a lot of these lots, I think your smallest lot you have in the single-family detached scenario is 50 by 120. The pad sizes that we're planning for is 75 foot deep, 20-foot setback, plus 75 foot deep is 95 feet. And so then we're left with 25 foot of depth in the backyard, which is pretty nice compared to some city lots that I've seen that, you know, go down as 10 or go down as low as 10 or 15 feet.
okay.
6,000 square foot is the
Okay, but, okay, work with me. 111 plots are proposed. Proposed lots are generally 50 by 120 with setbacks of 20 front, 10 for rear. So how are we getting 25 feet in the rear when we're looking at a 10-foot setback?
That's the 10 foot, that's the setback. Well, the pad depth is only 75 foot.
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay,
I think it's the difference between
Yes, okay, I guess I
Okay.
can answer that.
You have to have a certain amount of space around the house, and then you've got
The
setback
goes
as well,
beyond
so
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Gotcha.
the setback in the rear is 10 feet, but the pads are only planned to be 75 foot deep.
I see.
That's
Okay,
how we get there.
okay.
Okay, and then also, where would the pond area drain off to in a flood situation?
So Forest has a culvert that crosses the road there towards the middle of the site. It's more than likely that culvert will be upsized, just based on the preliminary engineering we've done so far. All three, we're planning for 3 different ponds. One north of the overhead easements, one south, and then one in the most southeastern corner by the townhomes. All of them would have outlet structures that slowly release into the bar ditch in Forest Road, or Forest Lane. But we have accounted for that. Final design hasn't happened, but we're gonna have at least probably 3 ponds.
Okay, and then if the culvert size has to be increased due to the increased flow of water, who would be responsible, the city or y'all?
Well, I think that's what Mr. Allen's
Oh, yeah.
actively speaking with everybody about, as far as the cost of that. As far, I can answer from an engineering perspective, I will have to be comfortable with whatever size culvert would have to go across for us. You know, we wouldn't, in the analysis we've already done, that culvert's likely too small. And so the final engineering plans would not be able to be signed by me if we kept it that way, unless further analysis proved differently. So.
And then what are the parking lot sizes around the parking, or around your proposed park?
Those are all 9.5 by 1850 minimum city code.
Okay, because I didn't see that on this paper here.
Yeah, we can add that dimension on there, but those were designed to meet city criteria.
I'd like to point out the parking for the townhomes, those are all 2-car garages. And so you'll have a 2-car garage and then a 20 to 22-foot wide driveway in addition to the parking that's around that playground area.
That answers my question was gonna be, is that parking around that area more for overflow for the townhomes?
It's
in the-
both.
in the area?
It'll
Okay.
service both.
Okay.
Landscaping, I see very little discussion of landscaping on here. I read somewhere that you're planning on it, but I don't see it here, so what's the plan?
We have engaged a landscape architect for our landscape plan, and a lot of the landscaping will be done by the individual builders on the actual lots as they're sold. They'll be responsible for their own
Sure.
individual landscape plan. We'll be responsible for the common areas, and we'll be detailing that out over the next few days.
Okay, and Phil, you know, I assume following all of the city requirements there.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Lighting, again, I saw nothing really about lighting other than a standard, we'll put in standard city lights, correct?
They're all detailed on the plan there, but they will follow in accordance with the ordinance.
That is the plan. There will be lights that need engineering design.
Okay, city lights, and is there a lighting plan for the green spaces, the HOA spaces? The park, I guess, will be dedicated to the city, so who's doing the lighting for the park?
We'll take a look at that on the engineering requirements
Okay.
and address that in our lighting plan.
Okay. Oh, okay, well, you have a picture of the proposed,
Entry?
entry, no, I was gonna say the,
Oh, the buffer, the fence line.
fence line. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful fence, is that exactly what you intend to do? I mean, it's gorgeous, and are you committed to that, that is my question.
Well, if you're asking me if committed to the color or.
No, but, you know, that in theory,
Type
you
of
know, a stone,
Will it be all
structure.
brick or will it
Right.
be
Our
something
intent
else?
is to have a masonry wall screening along the residential portion of along Forest Road.
Okay,
We want to leave the open space open so that it doesn't feel more crammed.
okay,
Right.
And we're gonna protect the privacy and the home value of the estate lot as well, and the privacy of the interior lot along the detention pond areas.
And is that gonna be a
Yes.
faux brick, or is that gonna be an actual
I wouldn't
Masonry.
vote for
masonry brick?
Masonry brick.
okay. And then you said you would handle the individual, you'd do a deed restriction for the perimeters
Yes, ma'am.
otherwise, okay.
All the perimeter houses will have builder fences, but we'll have deed restrictions on that.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Other questions from the commission? Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, gang, we are going to now open the public hearing. Again, I wanted to mention that we did have a letter opposed by Derek Stogstill. He was unhappy with the scheduling dates. He was also unhappy with the townhome. Okay, if you would like to speak, it would be terrific if you fill out one of these forms. I'm going to go through the list. Forms are located up here. You'll have 3 minutes to state your piece. We're going to start with people who are opposed, If you have questions, go ahead and state your questions. At the end of the hearing, we'll come back and, if questions are not resolved, we'll deal with them at the end. So simply state, and then we'll move on and come back to them at the end, okay? All right, so we are gonna start with, Mr. Thomas Haley. If you could state your name and your address, and you will have 3 minutes, and I believe, if you put up a 3-minute clock. Oh, beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thomas Haley. I'm here with my wife, Polly Haley. We live at 120 Greenbrier. And thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for having us tonight, as well as the rest of the committee. I have 2 questions, so I'll start with that so that you guys can notate them. The first question on page 12 that talks about the 200-foot buffer, which is this one, if you can see.
Yes.
It talks about 200-foot buffer. I'd like to know, is that 200-foot buffer from the back of the current property that the developer owns, or is it from the back of my property? Because if I'm reading this correctly, it looks like it comes into my property, the 200-foot barrier, so I'd like that clarified.
Okay.
On the fencing, or screening, I think is the actual word. I'm learning here, guys, so I'm learning a lot about planning commissions today and over the past couple of weeks. On the screening, you have a great question. Thank you for asking that. I want to, once he makes a commitment, can he change that at any time? Can the developer change that at any time? So if he says, I'm going to be a brick, this is what it's going to look like, it has to be a brick. It can't come back and be a wood finishing or anything like that. Okay. Forest lane, I realize that's not on the topic to talk today. I know lots of my colleagues and friends and neighbors over here have shared about Forest Lane. You guys know it's going to be a mess. I've lived on Greenbrier now 6 years. I think that road has been shut down a number of, like, maybe 5 times for an hour or 2, maybe for a day when they were building the bank. And it's forcing us to all go back over through Pecan Hill, come back out on the other side over where the fire department is, or having to go all the way back around to Lingerville is going to be difficult. For us, it's also going to be difficult for everybody who lives in the community. So Forest Lane has to get figured out. My recommendation, and if I had a vote, which I know I don't, but if I had one, I would say move them over to have all the entrances next to coming over on the other side where Fry Street is. It makes much more sense. You can have a red light, my understanding is supposed to be developed at some point at where the fire station is. Then you can have a red light there at Fry, and you have one at the end of Northwest Loop. Nice traffic pattern right there, so that might make some more sense. I am extremely concerned about flooding. My understanding, it's been explained to me that the way that land scopes, it goes down. Now, do I have 38 seconds? Is that how?
Right.
Okay. Now, that land scopes down, and it's supposed to go out toward Wellington Bank. But we also know once you start moving land, start moving stuff, things are going to happen. So I'd like to know if a flood plan is going to be done or anything like that. Home values, with all due respect, you flood the market with $150,000 to $300,000 homes, comps, it's going to bring the market value down. It's just the way it is. I understand what the argument was made, but there's not going to happen there. So I do have a colleague that could not make it tonight. I do have a copy of his concerns. I don't know if he knew that he couldn't, submit those. Can I submit those to you now so that you guys can read them?
It's a letter.
Yeah, it's an email.
Okay,
Is that okay?
yeah,
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
thank you, appreciate it. Next up, we'll hear from Dennis Hughes. You can state your name and address for us, thank you.
My name is Dennis Hughes, 2798 Thornhill, which is the corner of Pecan Forest and Thornhill. My concern, I don't know why the Forest Road was taken off of this, because that's going to be the main driving force of this. If this this plat gets approved, what's going to happen is the same group is going to build across the street and do something similar to this down the road. Forest is not going to be able to hold it all. And they're going to be coming down into our addition, into Pecan Hill Drive, and all that was annexed by the city, and those roads are not to the city standards. They're falling apart. They just got a chip seal base on top of them, and that needs to be addressed in the traffic flow. Again, if we could go to Fry and make that, and make it contingent that before this gets started, that Forest gets fixed. When we start bringing the cement trucks down, when they did the bank, they ruined the entrance up there, and the city has not repaired that at all. And you bring that many cement trucks for these homes, we're gonna have a big mess. And then, when y'all talk about the value of the housing in there, you said $300,000 or more. That's not low-income housing, that's not low housing. You need to be somewhere around $250,000 to have these young couples buy that. The townhomes, that's investment property. People are gonna invest, buy those, and put college students in there. And we've already got enough apartments and stuff for college students. And the college students, if you go around and look at all the apartments and all the townhomes that Stephenville has, I bet you there's only about a 75 to an 80% occupancy rate, that they're not full at this time. So we're gonna have investment property, and it's not gonna be for young couples or young families coming in there. And then you're also gonna have a parking problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bill Haney.
My name is Bill Haney. I live at 1412 Highland View Drive. First thing I'd like to do is I'd like to compliment Mr. Allen. He did listen to us the last time we were in here. They've made numerous changes in response to many things that were said. So thank you very much, sir, for doing that. Two concerns. First one is traffic. You're going to hear probably a whole lot about that, but a traffic analysis really needs to be done. You put that many people in a relatively small area, they're either working or going to college, 8 o'clock in the morning, they're taking kids to school, 8 o'clock in the morning, you've got a bottleneck, a serious bottleneck. We see bottlenecks at places like where Dale goes into the Northwest Loop. Those things happen when there's not a coordinated effort, and the city would be the leadership in this, of identifying how traffic is going to flow out of these undeveloped areas. And I'd like to encourage y'all to think of that. Second thing I'd like to talk about tonight, I understand that they are asking for many exceptions to the rules that you've got on what's going in there. Where does it stop? Where does it stop if you're going to make an exception to your rules? And that's a decision that y'all need to think about. And I encourage serious discussion of that. If you're gonna have a rule, most of us are gonna follow all the rules that we know. If you're gonna have an exception to the rule, why? If it's a bad rule, change it. Okay, and I'll repeat again. Thank you, Mr. Allen, for your listening to us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Lanny Butler?
Yeah, I'm Lanny Butler. I live at 100 Greenbrier, and most of the questions that I had have already been asked. But I had one more, and that concerned the electrical connections. There were a couple of places that were listed on that as electrical basements. Will all the properties be connected through those basements?
So just addressing me, and I've got a whole list, and we'll come back to it at the end. So question is electrical basements.
Yes, I'm concerned about them
easements,
putting
easements.
overhead
Gotcha.
electrical wiring into the houses over in these estate lots down the property line.
The existing
The existing
easements.
property line. There's an easement there that is used by the AT&T, I believe.
Right. And
It's
so-
all underground. And the service to my house is underground. And all my neighbors, it's underground. But a lot of places in Stephenville where they go right down these backyards, and they got 20-foot backyard, and all the power lines go right down every single
So your
lot.
question is will the power lines be above or below ground?
Exactly.
Got it.
that was the main thing I was concerned about, besides the things that have already been asked, so.
Excellent, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak in favor or against? All right, before we close the public hearing, let me just address this letter that was from Mr. Kurt Johnson. Let's see. I'll pass this down to the commissioners. This is from Mr. Kurt Johnson. First of all, I want it known for the record that Greg Bruner had told me he was keeping 5 acres of this development bordering his property during a purchase of 2.5 acres from Vicky and me a few years ago. This was the primary reason we sold our land to him. I understand that he'll no longer honor that. Okay, second, our neighborhood is an upscale neighborhood, including the Pecan Hill area. This development has to be done with that in mind so as not to change the look or feel of the area. I don't want to see lower income housing or multifamily dwellings, which would affect our property values negatively. Third, there'll be a huge increase in traffic in our area. Will this necessitate traffic lights and other traffic law enforcement? I think having green space for kids to play is important. Also, I assume they realize that a huge infrastructure change will have to take place to move water, storm, drainage, sewers, electrical, and the like. Okay, let us address the questions. Mr. Allen, if you could come back to the podium and let's address some of these before I close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I think that
Yep.
first question was related to the 200-foot buffer.
Yeah.
Want to clarify what that is. The 200-foot buffer is a requirement by state statute. If your property is within a 200-foot radius of this property, we have to notify you of the meeting. For this particular meeting, we actually went beyond the 200-foot because there were some people on Greenbrier that normally would not get a notice because of that 200-foot limitation. So we went ahead and sent courtesy notices to about 240, 250, just to make sure that everyone on Greenbrier was notified. Again, that was not a legal requirement, but something that we knew was brought up as a concern in the past. So that is a legal notification requirement and not anything specifically to do with the development or site plan as you're seeing it.
The next question was regarding fencing or screening. Can he change it after the fact? So what a plan development does is it locks in what he has to do. So legally, it locks him in. So if at this meeting and then when the city council approves it, if that's why I was saying, is this what you're really gonna do? Is this the stone masonry? Is this what it's gonna look like? Because that locks him in. Yes, he can't come back and do wood, right? So that's why I was hitting those issues. That's why I'm asking things about lighting. These same sorts of things is locking it. Does that make sense? So once this goes through this process, he has to adhere to it. If he doesn't, then there are other things that can happen. If he doesn't adhere to the building schedule or he doesn't follow everything that's been set out, we can pull zoning from him. Okay, so he can't just go in and willy-nilly do whatever. He's locked in. Flooding, there was a question about flooding and floodplains. Steve, I assume there'll be there's always a survey.
Yes, ma'am. So this, what you're seeing tonight is a site plan. It's not the plat, it's not the preliminary plat, certainly not the final plat. Staff will be working with Mr. Allen and his engineer, Reese Flanagan. Reese Flanagan does a lot of work with the city. He's very familiar with our development requirements. The concessions that they've requested so far are the only concessions that they are going to be making. We can't add to that list without going through other legal processes. So as we get into the review of those engineering requirements, he will have to meet those engineering requirements. And that's been very well understood from beginning of the project. So the concessions tonight are the things that he wants us to consider that he cannot meet with this site plan. So we will continue the review process at the staff level, and he will be required to go through the same requirements in any other development in the city. Flooding will be something that is addressed through a drainage study. And his development cannot allow the water to leave his property at a higher volume or a higher velocity than what it is already doing. So that is a requirement of the subdivision ordinance and the engineering standards manual.
There was a mention about a traffic analysis. Did you say that you were running a traffic analysis?
Yes, we are. We're waiting on the results of that, but we'll have that here shortly, and we'll provide that to the city, and that'll be really good information, I think, that
Okay.
will base some
Yeah,
of that.
so analysis will be done. It sounds like the Forest Road is obviously a deep concern for everyone, and I believe that's going to be handled at the city council level. Regarding the electric, above or below, or perhaps that's
It'll be
Lisa's
below,
question.
it'll be below.
It'll be
ground,
underground.
so It won't be above ground. There, Encore has those above ground easements that you'll see there in the green area. But as far as the individual houses, that'll be an easement on the front of the property below ground, so you'll never see it,
Okay,
both for electric and gas.
okay, thank you, sir. I believe that's all the questions that,
Exceptions.
exceptions, well, there was a question about exceptions. What exceptions can be made?
Madam Chair, I think my attempt to answer that would be that a planned development is a type of zoning district that can be approved in the city. Planned development, or a PD, allows the commission and the city council to make concessions. It also allows them to request additional requirements of the developer. Where the rules stop, or where we quit making exceptions to the rule, with the PD is exactly what the Madam Chair mentioned earlier. If it's approved, he has to follow everything that's presented in the plan development. He cannot change from the requirements of that PD if it is indeed approved as a zoning request change or zoning revision.
Okay, I see a tentative hand going up. I've not closed the public hearing, so thank you, Mr. Allen. Ma'am, if you would come up to the podium, state your name and address.
I just have one question. Oh, I'm Peggy Haney, 1412 Highland View Road.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask
You're
you a
just-
question.
I'm sorry, it's got to come to me and then I got to go to
Oh,
him. It's
okay,
weird.
I'm sorry.
No, it's weird.
He said the electric and the gas is going to be
Ground.
underground.
Yes.
Okay, I understand that. I was not aware that we had gas coming to that area. Will we? I mean, in our area where we are, there was no natural gas, so we had to put in propane or electric. So now we're gonna have natural gas over that way?
Okay, thank you, ma'am. That's your only question?
Yeah, that was my
Got
only
it, thank you. Mr. Flanagan?
Yeah, we have not engaged Atmos or any gas company at this time, but the intent of the 10-foot utility easement along the front of the lots would be for any dry utility, so gas, fiber optic, electric, all of it would be underground. So I think Mr. Allen's comment was primarily just saying that's where all that would be if we do end up with gas.
So there's no set
Nothing said.
discussion about gas? Okay, okay. Yes, sir. Up. I know.
Thank you for the clarification on the flooding. So my question, a follow-up question is, once the floodplain, if a design's done or whatever is decided on what's gonna be with the flooding, does it come back to this committee for review, or are we
No, sir.
notified?
No, sir, that's addressed at the staff level.
As addressed to staff level, so we'll have no other input on flooding after this meeting?
Mr. Allen's engineer, Reese Flanagan, will work with the city engineer and our third-party engineering firm. They have to go through all the reviews, meet all the conditions of our staff comments back to them before we will issue a civil plan release for construction of the improvements.
All right, thank you so much. There's tons of flooding on the street already. When we have heavy rains, there's a big flood that comes through the front part of our property, floods the Butler's property, and it was addressed by the engineer already that the area across the street from Forest is just not big enough. That's all gonna have to be addressed. So I'm very concerned about it, so I just want it on the record, so thank you for the
sir.
answer.
Understood.
Thank you, sir. And remember too that this will go up to city council next, and you can also speak your piece at city council. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close.
Mr. Barnes has a question.
Oh, Mr. Barnes, I'm sorry.
I have a couple of questions for Mr. King.
Mr. King is here tonight. Yes, sir.
Are we still in the public hearing?
We're in the public hearing, so let's go ahead and let's close the public hearing and let's have a motion, and then we'll bring you up during the discussion. Okay, so closing the public hearing, commissioners, we need a motion to discuss.
I move that we recommend to council denying PD 2022-009.
Is there a second? Fails for a second. Okay, so, I guess by default, we have a,
I move to recommend the council favorable PD 2022-009.
do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, now we can discuss. Mr. Barnes, you
Mr. King.
had some questions for Mr. King.
Yes. Mr. King, we've heard several concerns from the citizens tonight, the folks who live in the area. Primarily to me, the most two compelling questions, arguments, positions are Forest Lane and flooding.
Okay.
Can you explain what the city's stance, and I understand it's gonna be subject to approval of the council, but generally what the city stance is when it comes to responding to the requirements or the recommendations of a traffic impact analysis, and what the requirements on the city should this cause downstream flooding in the future. If this is all approved and move on and the gentleman's yard continues to be flooded even worse and so forth. Can you address those two? And I realize I'm putting you on the spot, Jason. I apologize for that.
No, that's fine. Let's take Forest Road first.
Okay.
So if you look, if you went out on the web and looked at our website and found the thoroughfare plan, in the future, right now it shows that Forest Lane should be an arterial, turn into an arterial roadway, which would be like 100-foot right of way. In those, when that thoroughfare plan was done, was back when cities could involuntarily annex land, and so it proposes that someday it's gonna go all the way out, straight shot on the Mill Road. That might have made sense then. Since then, the legislature removed the ability for cities to do that. So, and we're updating the comprehensive plan, thoroughfare plan later this year. So what we're doing is, that needs to be a collector level street now, because it's never gonna go to Lincolnville Road.
What's the difference between the
70-foot right of way versus 100-foot right of way.
two? And traffic, love it. Number of cars handled per day or?
Yeah, because it's size of roadway. So that's what'll happen in this case. So, but we can only, the city doesn't own any more right of way than what's there today. So when you look at the Blacktop Road, and I think we have just a little bit of right of way on each side that's available. So even if I wanted to expand that roadway tomorrow, even if the council said go spend $10 million on Forest Road, I couldn't actually spend $10 million on Forest Road, because all I can do is resurface what's there today. So I'm asking Mr. Allen to give us 10 feet of additional right-of-way along the length of his development, and then develop the additional asphalt to widen Forest Road at his development. If somebody comes across Forest Road and says, we want to develop that side, then we're gonna ask them for an additional 10 feet, and ask them to put in that asphalt to widen it on the other side too. But it literally is gonna have to be piecemealed, because we don't own the right of way. And so the only way we get right of way is when somebody does develop their land, and we say, okay, that's great, but now when you develop it, we need additional right of way. And then we need you to develop the roadway, because your development, the TIA, and we know that by adding all these homes, we need additional roadway width. Now, can I get additional roadway width for the entire length of it all at once? I can't. That's gonna have to happen over time. Some of the concern was people are gonna go back into the neighborhood around Pecan Hill. There's a traffic light coming at Pecan Hill by the fire station, TxDOT's, you see the signs out there. I think whether Mr. Allen's development happens or not, I think you're gonna see more people coming through the neighborhood headed to Pecan Hill, because if you're gonna wanna go back toward Glenville Road, it's probably gonna make more sense to try to turn at the red light than it is to turn left across traffic at Forest Lane. because the city is getting busier. So I think that's some of that. He has drawn a roadway that will connect eventually when we do bring Price Street across the northwest loop. But again, that's, again, predicated on development of that property to where we can then say, we need somebody to dedicate it to right of way and then build that extension of Price Street. I would expect some of those things to happen in the next few years, as the community continues to grow. But it's gonna take a minute to sort some of those out, and we'll have to piecemeal them together as the development occurs. So, I hope that answers that piece of it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. On the flooding, Steve said it very well. This development simply cannot allow more water at a higher volume than what is already shed off the land today. So that's what Reese and his crew do, is they calculate today how much water is shed when there's rain. And so they know what that figure is. Then, when they look at this design, they have to figure out how to not let water leave that property at a higher flow and volume rate than it does today. Now, you're talking about, you have flooding already today. Whatever fixes they come up with for this property aren't necessarily gonna fix that. What we're saying is they can't add worse to it than what's already today. Does that make sense? We have several drainage projects. You know, our city engineers and the Public Works Department have an entire list of utility projects that need to be done all around the city, whether that's drainage, water, wastewater. To put a number on that, it's approximately $240 million in different infrastructure projects. And so each year, we work with council to prioritize what those projects need to be and assign the budget dollars to them. So the fixes that they put in on this property may not necessarily improve what you're talking about. What the legal requirements say is they can't make it worse. So that's what the standards are, if that makes sense.
Says it's worse or it's not.
The math.
But that's somewhere.
Yeah, no, so our guys have developed a whole spreadsheet of how the calculations have to work. I'm not gonna attempt to speak to them, I'm not an engineer. Reese, yes, and Steve was right, Reese does a lot of projects for people developing in the city, and so he's very used to working with my public works staff and then our third party. And I can promise you the odds of him sorting it all out on the first time and our guys and their guys all signing off on it, I don't know, Reese, what would you put those odds at?
Very low.
Yeah.
So we go back and forth.
It's a lengthy process. And I don't pretend to understand it, and sometimes I have to wade in the middle of it and get involved. But again, at the end of the day, that's what it is. They cannot increase that volume of flow over what it is today.
What happens if it does? I mean, I have seen Mr. Butler's property just totally underwater.
Right.
And if they don't dump any more water on there and it does happen, can he go back and sue the city or dumping more water on him?
Oh.
It's in the minutes.
Jason King said it.
Well, you can sue anybody for anything, so, I mean, you know, I'm gonna ask my public works staff to take a look at the existing drainage issues out there now and just see, are there any, if this development does happen and it goes through, hey, are there any fixes we can do at the same time to make it all flow better anyway?
The drainage issue isn't just for us. It's Highland View too. My driveway is a river.
Right.
Half an inch.
Yeah.
And I've got
We're,
several.
we're getting way off
way off
topic.
base.
Yeah, we
But
understand that there are big
I've got
flooding.
several areas
Yeah.
across the whole city.
Yeah.
They're
But
like
we
that.
hear that there are big flooding issues, and believe me, there are so
Right.
many all over. We hear this every single time there's a development anywhere. So this is a long, ongoing process of, yes, there is flooding throughout the city, and it needs to be worked on.
But aren't we putting the cart before the horse if we're not addressing the
Well-
road problem and the flooding problem before we add another 160 houses?
No, because you have a problem.
Okay, wait.
Point of
Okay, we
order.
are getting outside of the
But
legally.
On the road problem, again, I can't address the road problem that I don't have right of way for.
Okay, so,
That's the only way I can get it is through development.
all right, we're gonna
Point of
stop.
order, we're in a public, the
Yeah, we're-
public session is closed.
Yeah, the public session's closed, so we can't keep coming in from this way. Right now, we're in just a discussion of the council. So let's, I appreciate everybody's concerns, and you can all just go have a word with our city manager later.
Absolutely.
Tell him all of your concerns, and I'm sure he will be very, very glad to hear.
Or your council members.
Or your council members, and your council members are another great resource for you to talk to about any concerns. But for this discussion right now, we are just trying to make a decision on this PD. So, commissioners, do we have any more discussion? Are you ready to vote? Are there any additional questions for Mr. King?
I've got multiple concerns because we're adding more infrastructure need that the city is already at $240 million needing improvements on now. This is going to be another one to add to it, and that's paid by the taxpayers.
What,
The city street improvements and everything that they're needing.
on Forest?
Mhm.
Well, we're not sure
But
that's not currently decided.
for the traffic, but then also the concessions that they're asking for, and if we allow them, that is going to create a chain of events later on with other PDs potentially.
Specifically the setbacks, or what?
Setbacks, changing up the dimensions of the property sizes and everything like that. And then we've got a lot of concerned citizens here as well, so.
Brian, I would proffer that with the additional construction comes additional tax value that will then come to the city in terms of property values and property taxes. So, ideally, if our city council and our city manager, not throwing under the bus, know what they're doing, then that all works to cover whatever additional expenses will come. So
That may
the
be
new
true.
construction will bring in new tax dollars, which will help to fund this widening of the Forest Lane, which sounds like is probably what's gonna happen.
And that may
In
be-
addition to what the developer puts into it as well.
Brian?
All of that may be true, but at the lower economic value of the homes that he was proposing, this is far higher than most people can afford right now as well, so trying to get them sold may be a problem.
Well, in that respect, the market will out.
Yeah, so let's, are there any other questions,
Is that what we're
concerns?
here to discuss tonight, or are we here to discuss up or down whether to take this to the council?
This is whether we recommend the rezone to plan development.
Right.
And that'll go to council from us.
Thank
Okay, are we ready to vote?
I think Mr. Allen's done a great job of addressing a lot of the concerns that were brought to him in the first hearing of this, and but that's all I would say.
Okay, so what we have right here is, because we're missing two people, we need, in order to pass this, we need 4 people to pass, or just a simple majority to deny. So the motion that stands is recommendation to council for approval of this plan development. All right, Mr. Barnes, let's start with you.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Mary?
Aye.
I'm an aye, and Brian,
Nope.
you're a nay. Okay, so this gets recommended to go to council for approval. Now, what that means is it's council will make their own decision. We're simply recommending to approve. So what you all want to do is show up at the first Tuesday of next month, right here, and voice all of your concerns. Hopefully, a lot of your questions were addressed tonight, and so your concerns can be more pinpointed to specifically, what you're worried about. I appreciate everybody coming out. I know this is hard, I know this is stressful, but this is what good government is about, everybody having their voice and trying to be heard. So I appreciate your time. And now we're gonna move on to the next item on the agenda. So if y'all wanna go get dinner, go for it. You don't need to stick around for the rest of us.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
What about the other two commissioners?
Oh, I,
Spring
no idea. No idea. No idea. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is case number PP 2023-001. Applicant Ward Rab, representing Atwood Distributing LP, is requesting approval of a preliminary plat of property located at 1800 North US Highway 281, parcel R77945, acres 11.961, A0804, Williams MR of the City of Stephenville, Erath County, Texas. Mr. Killen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is, the applicant is Atwoods, working with a gentleman named Mr. Ward Rab. They are presenting a preliminary plat to be reviewed for their project out on US 281. That property was recently annexed by the city. And tonight, we're simply asking the commission to review the preliminary plat and approve the preliminary plat. There are some conditions listed in the staff report. We received an updated plat yesterday. Staff has not had a chance to fully review that, so I'd recommend that we approve the plat with the conditions, and then as soon as those conditions are verified to have been met, the plat will be approved, and the project will be able to move forward. Preliminary plat has to be approved by the commission before we can approve the civil plan set, and so Atwoods is eager to get started on their new development. Once the civil improvements are completed and accepted by the city, a final plat will be brought back to the commission for review and approval. So this is simply to get the project started. Bill, with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Steve?
I presume those additional easements are gonna include like ingress, egress, ways to access this property.
So, staff's working with the developer, and developer's working with TxDOT, so we're all aware of the
Those
egress,
issues.
ingress, egress. TxDOT controls the traffic onto,
281,
281. And so that's why you see the private road that's being developed in front of those parcels along 281, is so the traffic will be brought onto the private access and then only exit the private road at the points that TxDOT approves.
So, just, maybe I need to wait, to discuss this, but like
Yeah,
my concern is,
It's gotta be addressed to me, and then I have to
okay,
address it to him.
my concern is, there, speaking of traffic, there's a lot of traffic now, especially with the new tractor supply and this
I wonder
added.
if this should
Are they
wait
going to be,
for-
is there gonna be a traffic study done? Because I feel
Okay.
like there probably should be
Okay, so
maybe an entry at the light instead of
Okay.
all these additional entries.
Question
along-
is there gonna be a traffic study done? I assume yes. Yeah.
So the project engineer will do an assessment on that, and if it meets the threshold, then it is required by the development process. So yes, that will be taken into consideration during the development review.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, other questions for Steve? Okay, I'll go ahead and open up a public hearing. Is Mr. Rabb here tonight? No, that's fine. Is anybody here who wishes to speak? To open a public hearing, is anybody here who wishes to speak for or against this, this preliminary plat? We'll close the public hearing, commissioners. We need a motion.
I move that we recommend to council approval of PP 2023.
We don't, we just
Oh.
do it at this level. We don't go to council.
All right,
Recommend approval?
yes.
Second,
Any need for discussion? Oh, wait, with conditions?
With the staff conditions.
So
Second-
your
second
motion is
with-
to recommend with staff conditions, and your second is?
second is with
Yes, ma'am.
staff conditions.
All right. All those in favor of approving the preliminary plat with staff conditions, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on. Case number RZ 2023-002, applicant Wayne Woolley, representing Triple W Remodeling LLC and JPW Consulting Company, is requesting a rezone of property located at 911 East Lewis Drive, parcel R29 808 being S2 600 City Edition, Block 76, Lot 5R of the City of Stephenville, Erath County, Texas, from 1 and 2 family residential R2 to Integrated Housing District R2.5. Mr. Killen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, current land use is R2, 1 and 2 family. Future land use is also 1 and 2 family. We have a illustration there showing you the water and sewer lines that are available for this particular property. Initial discussions with the applicant, he was asking about the possibility of a flag-shaped replat, so he could have an additional residential structure built on the back side of the property. There's not enough width there to allow for that type of structure or that type of configuration, because you have to have a 40-foot frontage for flag-shaped lots. So simply didn't have the width for this particular lot. That led to some subsequent discussions, and he is asking for consideration to rezone to R2.5. He is intending to build a townhome type structure on this lot. Again, we're working with some pretty tight lot dimensions here. And you may recall that recently we changed the R2.5 zoning. So now if there is any type of variance required, once he submits his site plan, he will have to go through the channels of the Board of Adjustment for consideration on those variations from the zoning requirements. So with that, ma'am, it's a matter of a simple rezoning request and the prerogative of the board or the commission on how we proceed. Be glad to answer any questions.
Sir, any questions for Steve? All right, we'll go ahead and open a public hearing. Is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of this rezone request? Anybody who wishes to speak against? Okay, if come up to the podium, give me your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. So whoever, ma'am, you can go ahead and go first. There's a form that you'll need to fill out, but just go ahead and say your piece, and we'll do that at the end.
So we own,
I'm sorry, name and address.
oh, I'm sorry,
And you'll have 3 minutes. There you go.
Karen Lubke, 1015 US Highway 281 here in Stephenville. We own 3 lots on this street, all of which are single-family, single-level houses, nice yards, very family-oriented. And our concern is that putting a big structure on this lot is going to increase the density of parking issues. East Lewis is not a very wide street. It's difficult for even 2 cars to pass now on the street because of the parking that's on the side. I don't know, there's a drainage, kind of like a creek across the street. So that additional building, concrete, what is that going to do to affect the water issues? There's just a number of things that we think go against the single-family housing neighborhood that's already established there. And with having 3 lots in a row there, 2 of which already have really nice single-family houses, we would be opposed.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, yes, sir.
I haven't completed this yet.
That's fine. Just go ahead and give me your name and address. And
Okay, my name is Travis Wood. I live at 553 South Lennox. I'm on the corner, on the opposite side of the street. My main concerns are also the parking. I mean, as it is right now, there's people up and down the street parking, and it causes issues. A lot of time, people park in my driveway. And I know this is just an opinion, but recently we had 2 of the houses with about 15 people living in each of them. One of them currently is like that. They actually moved into the previous one that had a bunch of people living in it. But I mean, I'm constantly picking up beer cans and bottles. You know, I have an 8-year-old daughter. I've had people drive into my yard because they take the turn too sharp and just, you know. And I can't say for certain that it's college kids, but I know more people, more traffic, it's more than likely going to continue. And, you know, I have concerns because I am a father. I've had to, you know, pull the old man card and chase after cards, you know, flying down the street. And, you know, I know all these things are opinions, but I feel that we can do better. I feel that a single-family home would be perfectly fine, but, you know, this is obviously geared towards college people or, you know, families with several people, several cars, and with that, those are my issues, so.
Thank you, sir.
Mm.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Sir. Please state your name and address.
Shane Sanchez, address is 909 East Lewis Drive, and I purchased the home next door to this property. When I purchased this home, the same realtor sold this home, or this land, to a couple that was gonna build a single-family home. It recently sold to Mr. Woolley to put this on it, I'm guessing. So, you know, I just have myself, my wife Vanessa over there, and my 12-year-old daughter that live in this house next door. It just raises a whole lot of safety concerns for us. I mean, you know exactly who's gonna end up living there. You even mentioned that he was gonna put something along the back side if he could. There's no parking in front of this thing. The street is very narrow. Everybody already parks on both sides of the road. And all that's gonna end up in front of my home or around my home. So I just really ask that you do not approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else here who likes to speak for or against? Is Mr. Woolley here? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, we need motions that we could discuss.
I move that we deny the replat of rezone of RZ 2023-002.
Second.
So the current zoning is
1 and 2 family.
1 and 2.
1 and 2 family.
R2.
It's R2. So under the current zoning, we could put up what?
Single-family home duplex style.
A duplex style home.
Yes, yes, sir.
So this allows a townhome to go in.
The R2.5 rezone would allow the construction of a townhome.
So what's the density difference?
But the two.
The density difference, so the lots, for a duplex style home, let me answer it this way, requires a 7,500 square foot lot for the first duplex, 1,000 square feet of additional space for any additional duplex on that parcel. If we go to the R2.5, then that allows for 14 units per acre. So.
But this
there
is
would be
a pretty small.
It's, lot dimensions, I believe, are around 75 by 1, I think the depth is 120 on this one. So the answer is that they could have, I believe the discussion centered around 3 units going on the townhome, here into the.
3 connected townhomes.
Yes, ma'am.
So it would be like one additional building as opposed to like a duplex. So it'd be 3 connected. Correct.
With 6 required parking spaces.
With 6 required. So if we leave it as is, the most they could do would be a duplex with how much parking?
Duplex would still require 2 spaces per dwelling, so that would be 4.
4, okay. Okay, thank you.
The lot's not big enough for a duplex though.
Sorry, we've closed the public hearing, so we can't talk to the peanut gallery, but I take what your concern. The problem was correct. The reason why he is asking for a rezone was the difficulty in fitting in a duplex, correct? The size of the lot?
Well, again, the initial discussion was to allow for a flag-shaped lot, to allow for an additional structure to be built on the back portion of the lot.
Okay.
Mentioning the lot dimension restriction and the 40-foot wide requirement for the flag lot, that it just simply wouldn't work. To build a duplex would be no different than building a single-family home. It could be, because each unit can be reduced to 800 square feet.
Right.
So that's 1,600 square feet, whereas a single-family home is required to have 1,500 square feet. So we're kind of comparing apples to apples in that respect.
Okay, okay. But the lot itself is big enough for a 1,500 or a 1,600?
Should be able to meet the setback requirements on that. And again,
Okay.
as I referenced earlier, there are mechanisms that allow, if your site plan does not meet those setback requirements, then you can go to the Board of Adjustment and they can consider a variance request. But that would have to be post a rezone, unless we keep it at the existing 1 and 2 family. He would still have that same variance process to go through.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, commissioners, do you have additional discussion? Are we ready to vote? All right, so I'm going to do a roll call vote on this as well. So what currently stands is recommend to council denial. So Alan, do you recommend denial?
Yes.
Justin?
No.
Mary?
Yes.
I am going to say yes as well, and Brian?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so as this stands, so this is going to go forward to council with the recommendation to deny the request. Okay, so again, we don't make the final decision, council does. So I would suggest you show up at the next city council meeting and make your concerns heard. Again, thank you for coming out. Great civic process. We appreciate you. Go forth and have dinner.
Move to
Commissioners?
adjourn.
Do we hand these ones?
Yeah, please, if you just bring these on up. Thank you so much. And
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion to y'all to take to the city council? And I did this about 10 years ago. Some cities, yeah, you take that off.
Yeah.
Some cities